Before we jump into our movie monster review, I would like to remind or inform some of our viewers and Monsterites of the best practices of using YouTube to see and watch the content that you are most interested in of the channels that you are subscribed to. I've been doing this ever since I made my first channel, and that is to make sure that I go to the subscriptions tab there on the left side of your screen. Don't ever go to the home tab unless you're feeling frisky or explorative, but head to the subscriptions tab, as that's where you will find all the content released from latest to oldest at the bottom by all the channels that you are subscribed to. And in doing so, you shouldn't ever miss any video of a channel that you love and stay dedicated to watching. I know this is a simple thing, and I'm sure a lot of you guys know about this, but there is a good number of my viewers that never see my new videos, and I've seen other content creators complain about this as well. For smaller and niche creators such as myself, the YouTube algorithm has been devastating over the years. So if you truly appreciate your time and those content creators you follow, make sure you stay on that subscription tab and follow up there on the content that you may have missed. We will be focusing on the critters, or Krites, of mainly the first 4 movies. Later added lore such as the seemingly female critter of Critters Attack 2019 doesn't make much sense within the initial context, therefore I reckon doesn't need to be considered canon. So strap on your seatbelts and hold on to your butts as we explore how well the Krites score and what tier among all horror movie monsters as well as small rambunctious movie monsters do the Krites of the movie Critters 1986 and onward fall into. And in figuring this out, we will be scoring them in the 5 following categories: design, lore, powers and abilities, influence, and the possible potential outwards of these monsters. Beginning with design, Krites are stocky to taller but still very stocky in form and covered in fur except for on the face, hands, and feet, and may have sparse amounts to sections of no coverage of fur on frontal body regions. When rolled up, they become completely spherical, and the skin that you do see appears leathery with long slanted pupils and a huge mouth with rows of teeth. Rows of teeth. What mythological creature does that make you think of? Starts with a man. Alright, either I didn't hear you or you give up. Manticore. And then spread out among the fur on their backs are needle-like sharp spines that may be launched at a victim at quite decent accuracy. They are dark in tone with hues ranging from black to browns and grays, as well as having fur as bright as white, giving off that aesthetically pleasing aged look. They range in size from a few inches after having broken out of their eggs to 13 inches when they really start to wreak havoc, to 4 feet in height, and possibly even taller. The large mouth and red eyes create for a very memorable face. Albeit their form is simple, it works. More details here and there, such as on their hands and feet, could pump a bigger score here, but would be a challenge to achieve without needlessly complicating the design. And it's a fun, somewhat unique concept that just had to really become a thing. And if only more money and better script writing were put forth, these little demons would have become even more well known. I really appreciate the bright red eyes on black for contrast, and believe it works wonderfully for box office presentations. Good old 80s glowing red on black nostalgia. Oh yeah. And so with all that and how it just works together while staying somewhat simple, I have to give the Critters, the Krites, a 6 out of 10 for design. Now for the lore, we'll start with looking at the reproductivity. Krites propagate via laying eggs. It remains a mystery whether the monsters are hermaphrodites, still requiring a pair to breed, asexual, needing no partner at all, and being able to lay eggs as chickens do, though probably more often automatically fertilized. Or if their eggs are the result of 2 parents, one of each sex, in which case sexual dimorphism would have to be very subtle and hidden, as all of the species looks all too similar to one another. And with that out of the way, within a big bag of mystery, we must ask the question, where do they come from? All we really know is that they are a cosmic nuisance that are intelligent enough to spread out far and wide to devour and multiply. It's not exactly known whether they're a natural species or lab of sorts created, considering the intergalactic Galactic Council deemed them a threatening species, it would seem they naturally evolved somewhere. Krites are predominantly carnivorous, but when hunger hits hard and they become reckless enough, they may feed on a variety of organic and even inorganic matter. Overall, I would assume their main diet is meat and secondarily other organic matter, dead or alive. They're able to verbally communicate amongst themselves, strategize, and even operate machinery, suggesting that their race could have or have had a decently structured civilization. As for within this universe, we know there are other races, and specifically bounty hunters, shape-shifting bounty hunters that pursue these malicious furry imps. And therefore, considering beyond this, there isn't much more known of the critters. Again, their size is another curious factor that is still unclear quite how big they get, and is actually important taking into account how fast they seem to grow, as well as then how agile they remain. Because being chased by a 6-foot spined rolling furball would simply be nothing to scoff at. But without that wonderful treacherous image or other unveilings of the mysteries, I have to give the Krites a 5 out of 10 for lore. As for powers and abilities, not just how powerful they are, but how diverse they are. Krites are seemingly clumsy in appearance, but they're really not quite so. They're able to fold into balls and then chase at high speeds and bounce, opening up just in time to bite you with their enormous grotesque maws. And don't forget, adhering to this deadly Pac-Man-ish form are sharp quills. So don't even think of grabbing one without the right gloves. Once fired off, these spikes don't just penetrate organs and flesh, but permeate the victim's innards with poison. The purpose of the poison? To stun larger foes and possibly kill smaller ones. They have claws which they could do some harm with, but mainly used for latching onto their terrified victims to tear into with their many fangs. Their 3 fingers appear simple, but Krites are quite dexterous with their usage. They're able to pick up things and even operate a spaceship. This brings to contemplation their intelligence level and type. It would seem they are very evolved predators that are able to problem solve and strategize various attacks. They communicate via fidgety noises that don't seem very complex, but maybe they don't need to be. Maybe they just inherently have highly adaptable reasoning, suited only for their safety, spreading of, and hunting. A mind not boggled with the unnecessary social constructs of, say, humans. Ruthless sentient beings seemingly cursed with their stumpy bodies. Do they become more intelligent, more wise with size and age? If so, they could seriously pose quite the threat, taking into account how quickly they develop straight from birth. This would explain why the other alien races within this universe find them worthy of traversing the galaxy for and destroying. Anyway, a great example of one of their hunting/combat strategies is being able to form together into a giant ball capable of cleaning any creature they roll over instantly of its flesh. So as for the abilities and powers, Krites seem to be a step above of what you see is what you get, especially if you miss those spines among their hairs. They're energetic, chaotic, mischievous, deadly sprites, possibly capable of far more than meets the eye. They aren't just little beasties, but quite a conscious race that I'd reckon holds many more surprises with just how bright they are within that grisly, dark exterior. But again, mysteries aside, I have to give a 6 out of 10 for P&A. Now let's talk about the influence of these critters, the critters. We're talking influence within our human world. Within social media these days, toys, t-shirts, music, movies, games, everything we create to amuse others with. It would be hard to come across a horror movie fan that's unaware of critters. Now aware, but as to how many have actually seen one of the movies or know much of the plot, well, that's another story. Therefore their shine within the spectrum of influence is quite diluted. Toys and products featuring critters are rare and far between, and unfortunately have always seemed to be so. The initial movie's budget being only $2 million, although making roughly $8, just wasn't enough to spark the interests of product companies and retailers worldwide. The biggest thing to come of them in the more recent years was Shudder TV Network's release of short episodes of Critters: A New Binge, which is quite horrible, albeit the Krites themselves look totally fine considering the budget and the other effects that feature within those episodes. Krites have barely stood the test of time. They have been beaten down and skinned, but still monster lovers reflect on their fun yet frightful demeanor. I find them quite unique after all. Many proclaim them to be ripoffs of the Gremlins, even though the Critters' first plot screenplay had already been written out 2 years prior to the release of any of the Gremlins movies. They just never got that big financial backing that would have inflated their influence for many years to come. And unfortunately, because of that, I have to give the Krites a 5 out of 10 for influence. Now what about potential? How dynamic are they? In exploring them further and the universe surrounding them and creating something good and in-depth to jump that lore score up. There are 2 key factors here that benefit the Krites in this criteria of potential. Their decent level of intelligence and all that mystery that still envelops them. It's not enough for a hell yes here, but I think a solid yes will work. The universe can be tastefully expanded upon, and I said tastefully. None of that new binge or 2019 Critters trash. And now, having spoiled the air with the mentioning of those 2, it's worth bringing up the white friendly critter, and I'll call it a critter, just to clear more respect for the term Krites. The white critter of Critters Attack, that movie of 2019. Mating or mating rituals could be further explored. But again, that's just a tidbit in the sea of mystery that can be discovered, and with the right writing, even that silly creation could be redeemed. Of course, with that proper Monstrous design makeover. But that's also why I mentioned it, as how much more can this monster's appearance be pushed, and for what reasons? Expansions on this universe should be very limited, as really the mystery and the threat factor is what secures these legged ferocious pinballs in the respectable arena of movie monsters. Take that from them and you can pretty much regard them as ruined. I love these crazy roly-poly pains in the arse, these lively little demons, and I'll get back to sharing my enthusiasm on that after the final verdict. But before that final scoring, yes, I do declare the Krites of Critters worthy of the stamp of badassery, my personal seal of approval, as they are simply unforgettable. They just have to be experienced first. Now, as our brilliant ogres calculate the final scoring, I have to shout out our supporters at Patreon, for no matter how high or low things get around here, they're always out there to remind me that yes, monsters do matter. I thank ye. And the final judgment is out. The Critters Krites comfortably nestle onto the tier of B. They are solid movie monsters, and with many such, deserve better creatives and financing. The worthy unexplored factors ground them below the higher regarded A tier, but the dynamics of the monstrosity that they are safely pose them above the mere C tier monsters. Now for me, you see, once upon a time in presentation, I have referred to xenomorphs as land sharks. Well, if that's so, then Krites are the land piranha. These crazy hedgehogs hold a special place for me, and I can't deny much of it is nostalgia, because it is certainly not the quality of the movies or plot. For me, it's all about their design and very nicely accompanying abilities. They're entertaining to watch, and I'd imagine to yield as a games GM. I remember imagining how cool and powerful the larger ones would be. Although, speaking of gaming, I'd love to see these guys in action in a properly designed board game or video game. Hell, why not both? Did you know? There aren't too many bits of sweet unknown to most people info on these creatures, other than what's really been presented here, and well, that they are most likely asexual, as in Critters 4 it's mentioned that the TerraCorps Corporation in this 2045 future story is in search of a self-replicating dangerous species they could use as a weapon. But really, did you know that there's a short film, very short, that you can watch here on YouTube inspired by these lovable pincushions of murder? Check out Critters Bounty Hunter. Jordan Downey put a lot of love into this little project and tried his best to keep the beastie as true in design as he could. And if you like alien visitor monsters, I suggest watching my monster review of the Xenomorph. And if you're out for something a bit more historic, I do these reviews on all genres involving monsters, such as this epic review of the Dragon of European mythology.